We're joined by Father Stephen Blaxton. He is pastor of St. Brigid of Kildare Parish of Midland. Tom Hornacek, Brian Shanley, and I, Marcus Peter, we are at the Diocese of Saginaw's Diocesan Center, and it's been a real joy conducting the pledge drive on location here. And so we're connected to the studio. And Father Stephen, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
Well, it's truly a blessing to have you join us, Father. And so this whole morning, the conversations have steered along the path of evangelization, the salvation of souls, and the fact that we're living in a culture that's become so morally numb that the language of salvation simply doesn't exist. And you're a pastor, Father, so I want to invite you to just speak to that as a pastor about the good of your flock and the need for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes, of course. There's a huge need to proclaim the gospel in a way that is, enculturated into our time and place. I think, the way that I approach that, and the way that I've kind of experienced it myself in both receiving it and proclaiming it is through personal relationships. I think the importance of cultivating like real, authentic relationships of trust is really the context that evangelization can occur in its most effective way. And so, building up those relationships, kind of following the model that Jesus followed, of bringing a small group of people together and investing in them as disciples, and then sending them to form relationships and proclaim the gospel. That's kind of the way that I approach it as a pastor, rather than trying to do one person reaching 100 people. It's more like one person invests in 12, and those 12 can go reach another 12. And so I think, following that model that Jesus followed, I think is one strategy, maybe the primary strategy that I employ in trying to spread the gospel and reach more people.
Well, Father Stephen, you have a school also, don't you?
I do. Yes, I was just over there. I come over to the school every Monday and speak with the kids, the class that's going to be preparing for Mass on Wednesdays.
Well, I know that a lot of Catholic schools have a lot of Protestant parents are sending their kids there because they do not want them to go to public school. Is that your experience in your school?
It is. I would say the majority of our students are Catholic, but we do have other denominations and other religions that send their children to St. Bridget's School.
So that's certainly a door into the Catholic faith, isn't it, for the parents through their children?
Definitely. And I think, we have, there are 4 families in the school who are going to be, 4 parents and one whole family that are going to be entering the church this Easter. And, you get stories of these families who their kids come back from school and just start sharing about what they've been experiencing at school and what they've been learning about the Lord, about what they've been getting in our Catechesis of the Good Shepherd program, what they've been getting at Mass, what they've been getting and experiencing all the other children going through sacramental preparation and all of that. And there's one story in particular where there was this second grader who, after kind of experiencing what it was like to learn about the Eucharist and communion in class, there was one day he came home to his mom and said, "Mom, I want to become Catholic." And Mom looked at him and she said, "I do too." And so both of them are going to begin to the church this coming Easter because of his kind of being brought into a culture of faith and brought into a community that is really trying to live the sacramental life.
Well, we were talking about that with Father Adam earlier, is when parents are concerned about their kids or their family and praying for them, and instead of like, "Lord, when are you going to do something?" No, it's like, "What do you want me to do?" And it sounds like when they send their kids to a Catholic school, that is definitely a big doorway for a lot of these people to encounter Jesus and the Catholic faith through their children, isn't it?
It is, and I think that idea of a Catholic school being an apostolate of the Church is one that I'm deeply committed to, and one that I think many of our Catholic schools need to be renewed in the real mission of Catholic education. And so I'm really proud of partnering with this organization that's called the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, And I think it's the most exciting thing in Catholic education. And through our partnership with them, we're trying to make Catholic education thoroughly Catholic, in the best sense of the term, so that it's not just about, providing a thoroughly rich Catholic, catechesis and religious education, though they get that, but it's also about producing a kind of educational model that produces great minds and does intellectual formation in a way that's, I would say, much more effective than trying to model a modern philosophy of education, which really tries to separate faith and reason, which really tries to it looks at education as kind of just pouring data into people and then having them kind of like repeat that data on a test, and that so that the measure of education becomes basically like how much information you can output that you've received. And anyone who has a child, anyone who's a human being knows that that's not the measure of education. That's not the measure of knowledge and wisdom. It's about how you think. It's about your capacity to reason, not just what you're able to output from the input.
And as we were talking about with right now, we are live from the Center of Ministry in the Diocese of Saginaw, Michigan, and we have Father Stephen Blaxton. He's the pastor of St. Brigid of Kildare Parish in Midland. And this is day one of the Fall Pledge Drive at Ave Maria Radio. And we're here because we have two stations here, 1440 AM and 105.9 FM, covering his area of Midland. And we're also online on the internet. We're on the app. We're reaching people where they're at. When you consider how Catholic radio serves as a general bridge for people on their own spiritual journeys, it offers a space where listeners can explore faith at their own pace, and often helping them feel more comfortable with the idea of attending a Catholic church. Conversions are powerful and can be a powerful first step, opening the doors to Catholic communities, schools, universities that have the potential to truly change lives. And Father, speak to it a little bit about the importance of like Ave Maria Radio and being online and social media where we're at, in people's encountering Jesus in their own personal space, if you would.
Yeah, I think media and the new media are still, that's kind of the language that John Paul II used. So maybe that's a little bit of an outdated term, but the new ways that information can be communicated to people is obviously, in our day and age, it can be almost overwhelming. And so having the resources and having the channels and having the communication environments where you can immerse yourself in something that is Catholic and you can immerse yourself in something that is uplifting, that's, I think, a huge breath of fresh air when it comes to the media landscape that we have. And so, insofar as we need to have a space where we receive that information through the media, and so it's not just for Catholics, but also, of course, for other people who don't yet know the message of the gospel. That we need to be able to proclaim the message of the gospel in every aspect of our culture, and so I think media is obviously a huge part of that, and having a presence there and being able to proclaim something that's thoroughly engaging and beautiful, like Ave Maria does, I think is a really effective way of reaching people who haven't yet heard the message of the gospel.
We are talking with Father Stephen Blaxton, pastor of St. Brigid of Kildare Parish in Midland. And Father, you were just talking about how the modern vision of education is not only impoverished, it's frankly destructive. And it's been unfortunate that many Catholic parents, and even Catholic institutions for that matter, have espoused that model of education, and then eventually down the line they see that its fruits don't really come to bear, and that the human person is worse for the wear rather than being formed in the faith. Could you please speak to that?
Sure. This is something I'm really passionate about, and but I want to just give a caveat that obviously the history of Catholic education in our country has been has had an immense impact, and so where Catholic education is at in this day and age, I think is always having to face the questions that we're asking now, that you're posing. But I think for a long time it worked for Catholic education to kind of be modeled and mirrored in public education. But we're in a different place now, and that model of kind of trying to mirror what public education does has resulted in something like 6,000 Catholic schools closing across the country. And so I think Catholic education is at a crossroads of needing to reassess who we are and who it is that we are. And so, it's not about denigrating what has happened in the past, but it is about saying we're in a different place now. And the culture is no longer, supportive of a Christian ethical framework. And so insofar as that's critical to forming children and minds, then it's going to have a reflection in what we do in education. And so what I believe and what the vision of the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education is committed to kind of rediscovering is our own tradition of education in the liberal arts tradition, in the classical liberal arts, that we can hand on to students the things that have produced the greatest minds in history. We can pass on to students the tools of learning, the tools of the intellect that set them free to be able to hold reality in what's true, good, and beautiful in a way that's, that is not provided in that same way within a modern philosophy of education, which was really designed not to produce people that encounter God or behold what's real, but to be prepared to, produce an economic end. And so we want to be able to give students what God wants to give them, which is kind of what the classical liberal arts tradition offers them.
And in that light then, especially considering the work that you're doing at the school, but also what Ave Maria Radio does every single day, could you speak to how the work of education isn't just confined to institutions, and that all of us ought to be engaged in the formation of the soul to, in your words, what God has called us to?
Yeah. As it relates, I'll just answer that as it relates to Catholic education. I think, all Catholics are responsible for the well-being of Catholic education. And we think about, how, who is ultimately responsible for the care and the success and the vision of Catholic education. Well, it's not just the parishes that have the Catholic schools. It's really all Catholics, because just like, if there was only one youth ministry program in one town, all Catholics would be responsible for supporting that one high school youth ministry program. Or if there was only one marriage preparation program in one town, all Catholics would be responsible for helping support that marriage preparation program, because it would benefit the whole community. It would benefit everyone who's going through that. And so I think all Catholics, we share the same mission in providing an education for students and for children who are desiring it within this kind of vision of life and of love that really the Church offers us in the purpose of education and the end of what it means to be human. So I think that responsibility is one that all of us, all Catholics, need to take ownership of as just part of what it means to be Catholic and to form a society that is made up of people who know what's real.
Father Blaxton, if you would speak to that, and that is that as an adult, we're also on that mission of constant learning until our last breath.
Absolutely. Another organization that I've partnered with to try and minister to the needs of adults is this organization called the Evangelical Catholic. I've partnered St. Brigid with them to engage their discipleship formation strategy called Reach More. And so that strategy it invites a small group of people to come through a 12-week training that really centers on their own personal relationship with Jesus, and as a natural outflow of that, kind of what the particular way that God is calling them to the work of evangelization through their own personal apostolate. So I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about forming adults, both, primarily, it's all, of course, primarily about their own personal relationship with Jesus through deepening their relationship with Him in prayer, different techniques of prayer with Scripture. But I'm really passionate about that particular strategy because just in my own life, in the previous parishes that I've worked at, my own experience, it's one of the most effective ways to help adults encounter God in a new way that becomes much more personal. And what I believe is that a natural response to that is to take up the work of evangelization, which is ultimately what I think everyone, all the hierarchy of the Church are trying to go for these days, is changing the culture of parishes and the Church from maintenance to mission.
And Father Stephen, if I could say, because we have people listening all over the country and the world, if you're listening right now, just the thing that he shared with us, this is why we exist. Would you repeat again who you've partnered with for adult formation for your parish? Because I know there's people listening saying, who was that? Who did he mention? If you would, please.
Sure. It's called the Evangelical Catholic. That's the name of the organization, and their leadership and discipleship training initiative is called Reach More. And I'm sure they would love to hear from anybody who would want to call them. But they're partnered with parishes all over the country. They're even partnered with campus ministry programs. They're partnered with whole dioceses. And in my opinion, they're one of the best in the business. And I'm really fortunate for all the formation they've provided me.
And for Father Stephen, that's kind of why Catholic radio is still very important, because it's people tuning in and hearing these personal conversations. It's like two friends talking. Wouldn't you say that, Marcus? It's like two friends talking, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, I got to check this out. I think I could take that to my pastor, and he might be considering to do it. He's been looking for something, and so that's why we exist, to connect you to those resources.
So, Father, we are at the end of the hour, and before we let you go, I wonder if you could just a final exhortation to everyone listening right now, why they should donate to and support the apostolate of Ave Maria Radio.
It's about their personal relationship with Jesus and fostering that relationship with other people. And the more that is out in the public, the more that's on the airwaves, the more that's on the internet, the more that can become a reality. It's always about, at the end of the day, Jesus and what he has for people.
Well, thank you so much, Father. That was beautiful. My guest has been Father Stephen Blaxton, our guest. He is the pastor of St. Brigid of Kildare Parish